Hi, folks, and thanks for joining us today on the Higher Ground podcast. I'm your host, Tom Castriota, and I've got a very special treat for you today. Today is a collection of artificial intelligence short stories, vignettes, little clips of previous interview experiences with my guests, Sarah Wentworth, Sage Gibbons, Mike Wacey, Dori Albert and Mike Bousch, Preston Gisch, Doug Wald, and Aldo Rosales. The idea behind this show is to collect some interesting stories around artificial intelligence. So whether it was being interviewed by a chatbot, as Sarah was, or refreshing those differential equations chops for learning how machine language learning models work, and more. We talk about tweaking resumes and the like. So I hope you enjoy the show as much as I enjoy creating this. And if you do, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
So I found myself without a contract, and I have found that I have interviewed, I have put out probably well over 200 applications now, and I realize now, first of all, being out of work will humble you. It'll make you grateful for all that you do have and what you had before, and I have made several new friends. I'm treating this as a great new adventure. That I've made some great friends with different recruiters and different potential employers, whether we're going to remain connected or not. That's sort of our life. That's life.
Yeah, time to tell. Yeah.
I've taken the opportunity to spend every single day learning more craft. I learned Microsoft Data Fabric, which is an overall data tool. It's akin to Databricks for those of you that know these data tools. And trying out case studies on with different cloud tools, and I read feverishly, and I believe that it's making me a better potential candidate. Which you were honing our skills, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I've interviewed with bots. At this point, I've had 2 interviews with artificial intelligent bots.
I'm like flabbergasted. So you have a virtual conversation. You're real, but the other person on the other side of the conversation, your interviewer is a machine.
That's right.
And what in the world? Like, what was that visual experience like? Was it just a voice? Was it a video chat?
It was an avatar with a voice. Mm-hmm. And it is hard to get. It's really hard to get your head in the right space to do this. And I'm not good at I'm not good at everything. One of the things I've been told I'm good at and I like doing is public speaking. So I had to put on my public speaking hat and just pretend that you're just speaking to the public. So that was strange, and it's where it appears that this is where hiring process is going. I've also learned that the hiring process involves having resumes that scan what they call the ATF system, applicant tracking something, and you have to have your resume in a certain format, which I was busy writing and my accomplishments or things I'm proud of, and no. You have to check the box sort of thing. So that's very important, or your resume won't even reach it to the hiring desk.
So how you structure your content, how it matches the job description.
That's right.
One of the things we talked a bit about is using like AI to customize your resume for the job and then to have it find gaps, et cetera. But you're saying that's mandatory. Like that's not a nice to have. You've got to do that, basically. It's got to fit perfectly.
It has to fit very, very well. You have to be a good fit in your wording just to get the door open. And what I've also found with like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, with these things, you cannot just leave it to that, even though you're
Oh
literally
no.
becoming sort of this mass mailer,
Yeah.
mass applicant, if you will. You have to review every single one, because I've had ChatGPT just it dropped Deloitte off my resume.
Yeah, you need to own your pen. Yeah, no. I mean, these tools, I look at them as AI assist. They're assistants. You need to make sure it's correct.
Yes,
And all of that. But so, could we just go back to the bot for a second? Because I'm still blown away by this concept.
me
So you
too.
got this avatar in front of you. This, again, this, not that this is relevant, but I can't help but ask it. I just feel like it's gendered. Like, did they have a persona of a male or female or any like what was
Um,
that like? Did they try to
it,
make it human?
it was a female voice, and I'm not.
Okay.
And it was a female avatar.
Okay.
She sort of had sort of this sort of do.
Okay. Like, I'm not, like, we're gonna be crystal clear here. I'm fascinated by the experience.
I
It's
don't
not.
think she was. Yeah, it.
It,
I had to practice. So for those of you that are also enduring this, look at the YouTubes on this. There are stuff out there
oh
for
wow.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, and practice, 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 because you've got to get your head in the right space. And
So I'm guessing it's probably like not good form to laugh at the thing, right?
yeah, I found myself at one point forgetting that I was doing this, and I made sort of a crass joke, and then I pulled myself back, and I thought, who cares?
Right. It's a machine. Oh my god.
Yeah. But this is,
I
I mean, I think this is our new economy of hire, and I I will share this with you. Is that um, I was told before that ageism is real,
hmm.
and it's limiting those of us who are still very able to work and want to have a desire to do so.
I love work. Like,
I
frankly,
love work. I
we do
love
this because we love what we do, right?
what I do. So I've been interviewed by. We'll go back to the whole bot thing.
Yes.
So
Back to the bot.
yeah. So I've come back to the bots. I've got interviewed with the bots. I've interviewed with humans. I've had some very,
Sarah,
yeah.
which one did you like better?
Yeah, that's right. I like the British speaking bot.
You like that? Okay, honesty is our policy here, so thank you for that.
I like the British speaking bot. He was so very polite.
You fancied him over the other bot.
I did. She had the good updo, and she was her voice was slow, but I liked him better.
Okay, that's wild world we
Right?
live in.
It's George Jetson stuff. Anyway,
Yeah, it is George Jetson stuff. Yeah.
I've been in my interviewing experience. I've been told cut the last 10 years, 15 years off your resume.
Hmm.
Been told to remove my graduation year from
Yep.
my college.
Yeah.
I've been told to dye my hair. I've been told to. I've been told that I needed to just forget all the foundational years that I had in this industry. And I will tell you that I did all except color my hair.
For you. I mean, that who told you that? Like a recruiter, account, like where
um,
did that come from?
it was from a senior leader in an organization who was a friend of a friend who was reaching out to me and just trying to help me. And in his mind, he's trying to help me. And he told me that he was the one that told me about the ATF score on these resumes being scanned.
Yeah.
Because of him, I did change my resume. I learned about ATF scan, changed it, and the volume of callbacks and activity, it definitely increased. So it's true, it is
Mm.
true. And I did cut the last, you know, 12 years off my first 12 years, which is heartbreaking for me because there is some of my best some of the best foundation I ever had. And which leads me to ageism. And I just want to say this to the world. This is my PSA. I do not understand why in our culture, why we do not value people in our middle years and like latter, or like maybe a decade or less before we will retire years kind of thing, kind of years. Because um, because we're now childless. We don't have to focus on little people and swapping schedules and the myriad of issue with a young home, a young household. We're dedicated. We know where to strike the hammer.
Yeah.
I have learned all these cloud tools now on my own because I learned the formative tools.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I am turned down for jobs because I don't have 5+ years in AI, ML, hands-on, boots on the ground. And I just think I I I picked that up myself. Like, I know this skill because I know all these other skills that came before. And for people to think that we're here in technology today and it just like it was just born yesterday
Last week. Yeah. Yeah.
is just a superfluous
Yeah.
notion, because everything has been built upon something that came before, and we have a really deep, wide skill set.
And that was really like the first time where I'm, you know, totally like opening across the field as far as like what's out there. And so I could tell you about my experience at Pro Social World too. But yeah, I mean, coming to the present day, it's definitely a, especially now. I mean, I can't even, I don't even know, I have no perspective on beyond right after like undergrad, long time ago now, of applying in a world where everybody's using an AI. You're using an AI, they're using an AI, we're using AIs to read AIs, and it's like
Do you mean as
the
part of
whole
the recruiting process? Is that what you mean, or
yeah, just the whole applications and everything. And I mean, like at some level, you look at like just the numbers game and like the volume. You're just trying to like sift through things. You go on LinkedIn Premium, it's recommending jobs to you through AI. It's helping you decide. You write
yeah.
you're helping you using that to help diagnose what they're looking for. You're trying to write your resume and tweak it based on so it's like then you get sent to their side and they're using also filtering with that. And so it's like
Interesting.
I found basically after probably sending out, I think in the past 4 months are around different rates of effort, but like 200, let's say, applications.
Wow.
That that just doesn't get any traction when you're just sending it out there. I mean, like there's some chance that you kind of do it, but then I've really shifted my strategy much more to just looking at my network, seeing
Yeah.
who's a friend of a friend, and um, not only just because obviously it's great to get a referral and that, but when I actually get to talk to somebody about the company they work with, through an introduction or however, and I can just talk about it. It doesn't matter if they have nothing to do with the hiring team or even necessarily on that team, just to get that perspective. The job role that I might see, I actually can understand it. And you realize like the notes I have and I look at the job, I'm like, I never would have realized that this was actually what this was about.
Yeah, the work not matching the role profile. Yeah.
There's just too much that they're not putting in there. And then like, and so then I've been able to put together much more focused applications, and those have definitely had a better impact. And search is still on, but it's really it's definitely a puzzle.
Yeah. I do think the strategy. I think first, one thing I always recommend is if you've got like talking to like friend network, and like you and I can talk offline about maybe picking some. Well, we should talk about it, but it's like some suitable companies. If I know somebody, I'll certainly help. But the other strategy is like recruiters, and recruiters can help if you find the right one. I mean, they don't always have the best reputation, but if you know somebody, or like I've got a very good friend who I would recommend to anybody in a second. But again, that's one person in one organization when there's there's either a lot of jobs or a lot of noise. I will say though, to comment on your AI comment, I played with that for a while. I was looking at a position, and it was for an AI company. I was using AI to customize my resume for the role on an AI team.
Yeah.
And then went back and asked the AI that I was working with to refine my resume for an AI chatbot was reviewing
Wow.
my
I
resume.
haven't gone that far.
It was so meta. It was like, wait, am I like am I on Earth right now? I've gone
Yeah.
so many layers of abstraction away from like. But you know what's funny, because a lot of the feedback was good. It was like, you're the job says you need X and you've got gaps here. I was like, okay, it hurts, but it was good.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
actually, let me say a little story about that. As part
yeah,
of those 200 applications, I was like, all right, I'm using ChatGPT and things like that all the time. Just, help me with little things, and how can I, there's a certain, like I always think of those as best for like the blank page, getting past the initial, blank
sure,
page kind of thing,
yeah.
especially if you have like
In the
templates and
outline,
things.
or yeah.
Yeah. So the flow I've developed, I made my own um, GPT, which you can just make. It's just like you just add custom instructions on ChatGPT, and you can do this just in any conversation with like an LLM. But I have had a running thread, so the whole conversation, it knows every single job I've applied to, and
Which is great. Like that, having that history is huge.
yeah, because I'm like, what did I say about that one thing I said? And it's like, just helps me remember how I said it and different ways I've said it, because you start to get foggy on, kind of saying similar things a lot. So the flow I have now, and actually I want to ask you about recruiters after this, but I found a random LinkedIn post that was just kind of giving some advice around preparing resumes and things. And one thing that I took away from it was the advice to read the application, read the job description rather, and try to identify the sort of like job functions, like the things that they value. And then rather than like the specific things they want you to do or stuff like, just like, what do they really value? Things like extra communication, really super organized, extreme, like really good at analytics, whatever it is. Just like those high level, like these are what I'm good at. And then think in general across your experience, like what have I done where, I've done that, and how, and importantly, like how do I know that what I did was good? Like that kind of results focused
Outcome based,
resume. Yeah, outcome based. But really like stepping back and thinking, that helped me think across all of my experiences, even smaller, like I've done marketing
That's really
contract
good.
jobs and things like that, and say like, all right, I actually can think of like one or two things from each of these, and they're all good representation of like, rigorous analysis or things like that. And I'm like,
Communication or presentation skills, or
yeah, exactly. So now I can kind of, and so then what I did was I created, like, rather than tweaking my resume and over again, I had like sort of a master reference where each section was those high functional areas, like excellent communication. And then underneath was every example that I results outcome based and super clean. And I could always just use that. That describes it perfectly.
That's
But
like
I would, yeah, I would pull it around. But what this helped me do was realize that the same experience can be framed in terms of a different thing that it shows, because that's true. It's more than one. Some things it's more about communication, more about project management. So help me tell the story about different things I've done in ways that focus on that, rather than trying to like tweak the same language. And so that has really helped me like quickly put together a resume that I feel like it's authentic. But it also represents more of like that high level, what we're really trying to go for, rather than they said, Tableau. So I make sure I put Tableau and like all these little things. Like, yeah, those things matter too, but like, what was the point of this part again? So it helps you. Yeah.
That's great, honestly. Like, and it keeps you grounded in terms of like your collection of experiences and matching this particular set of skills to. I think that's a phenomenal. Like, I know some recruiters love to get their hands on your methodology.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's sort of been
It
this
works on both
evolving
sides.
process.
Yeah, no, it could easily work on both sides. I think that's that. I mean, that's deep. Like, honestly, that's really good.
All have solutions, because I get people, students who come to me and say, this doesn't work, I can't solve this, right? Well, 22 other students in the class solved it. It's probably got a solution.
Right.
It unfortunately, it's an internal thing, right? Internally, the person has to come to the realization that just because something doesn't work doesn't mean there's not a solution. We always talk about changing the.
Do you? I mean, I have to believe it's gotten much more. What's the word I want to use? Common, prevalent, where you used to search for the problem. Like back again before there was Google, you'd ask a friend.
Yes.
Then then you'd ask the machine, and now you're in a situation where you can like hand the problem to an artificial intelligence, chatbot or conversation. How do you see that playing out in the present, in your present space, but also going forward?
So that's probably the biggest problem we face in education today, right? Because I want them to learn stuff. So again, I teach programming, right? So I want them to learn Python or Java. I've dated myself there.
That was me too. Turbo Pascal, baby.
There you go. So I want them to learn that. Now, when they get out into the quote unquote real world and they start doing the job, yes, they will be encouraged to use AI to do things quicker, right? But you can't do that without understanding how the underlying stuff works
first,
right? For example, if I go to Gemini and say, create me a program that does X, whatever X is, it will be wrong because I've tried and I know that it will be wrong. But I know enough about the underlying language and the underlying, to figure out where the problems are and solve them, right? My students don't. So they need to have the practice doing that so that when they get to the AI solution, they can do it. And it's an interesting problem because I don't mean to ramble on here, but
no, please do.
If they were an architect, they wouldn't have to learn how to lay bricks, I don't think, right? They can let the bricklayers lay the bricks. Whereas I'm asking them to learn to be a bricklayer, in essence, right? To write the programs before they can use the AI to write the programs for them, essentially the bricklayer. I don't know I haven't come up with a mental framework as to why it's different, but it is.
So, is it though? Like I'm going to push on that,
okay,
right?
Sure.
Because I think where I'm, Eric, this conversation, and I've had similar ones like this, have reminded me back when my kids were in, I don't know if it probably was elementary school, maybe late elementary school, early middle school-ish. My memory is not the best. But there was distinct moments in their learning and education, like, why do I have to do math by hand? I have a calculator.
Yes.
And it's like, why do I need to learn the multiplication tables? Why do I need to do long division? I hate long division. I'm like, we all hate it. But it's learning how to do a procedure. It's learning how to do something that that's important to learn how to do. And for those reasons, right? And I don't think it's changed. I think it's the same. It's just maybe what's different is the degree of complexity of the problem solving is order of magnitudes higher, maybe.
Right.
But it's still the machine giving you the answer.
Yes. I have a funny story about that.
Please.
So I'm on top of everything else we talked about. I'm currently pursuing a doctorate in AI and machine learning.
I mean, why wouldn't you, Mike? This is it's very on brand.
On brand, yes. So I had to take a class in AI and machine learning math, right? Where they required me to relearn, because I learned at one time, how to do a bunch of things, including something called partial differential equations, which
I actually remember that.
Yeah, and it's been a while. Yes, it's been a while, and I had to go back and relearn that. And it's like, why do I have to? And I complained to the professor at one point, saying the reason I was in computer science was so the computer could do this for me, and I didn't have to do it.
Right.
And then we learned about this was before we learned about the LLMs, the large language models like Gemini and ChatGPT and whatnot. And if I hadn't relearned partial differential equations, I would have a lot of trouble understanding how the internals of those things work.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So I didn't necessarily have to do it, but I needed to understand that to be able to understand exactly what was going on internally. And so that in that sense, it was helpful.
Yeah, and you weren't learning it for the first time as a painful undergrad.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I just, oh, wow, that's really interesting to me. Like, and that rings very true, right? Because if you want to understand how the machine works, right, whether it's a car engine or an LLM, right, it's important to understand the principles of, all the different physics dynamics or the mathematical dynamics. It's interesting, and getting to that lower level, but that base level of understanding can then help you say this is how it does, and now I can take further leaps. Interesting.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I will say that was, I think that makes makes a ton of sense to me. I really enjoy, like, that's, I think, one of the things I liked most about consulting, particularly when I was doing like the data architecture work, was that once you could put together the whether it was a schematic, a diagram, whatever, like the parts on a map that said, all right, here's what we're going to build this, we're going to build this process or this infrastructure or both, right? And then saying, like, where does it break? Like, where does it stop working? Or how do we optimize this piece? And you can't do that without knowing how all the parts work.
Yeah, but a lot of people want to hire AI people, and there's not a lot of people with skills with AI right now, right? So that's a pretty big demand on the data side too, but that's such a broad category that, lots of different things, Power BI, things like that. It runs the gamut, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is it finding, like, people will reach out to me, and different, different times in my career, and especially lately, it's like, so, are there any openings at your company? Da da da. I'm like, AI. It's like that's the push, and it's can you find the
and it's hard because there's not so much experience in AI, right? We've gotten very good at hiring people that have background in Python and other things that basically lead to being a good AI engineer or whatever that does help fill the roles. So we have the benefit on the Microsoft side of being very heavily involved in AI. So we kind of see a lot of people through that too. So
are there any particular use cases that you see standing out, or are they all over the map?
Use cases?
The AI in general?
Oh.
Yeah, AI in general. Because I can't.
That's such a loaded question.
I'm sorry.
No, but AI, I mean, I almost feel like AI is going to turn into a dirty word pretty soon because it's like it's so all encompassing of so many things. The way that we approach, so it started out exactly how you're saying. Use case. What's the use case? What's the use case? What's the use case that you're building? We do a lot in higher education, tons. So a lot of what we see are things like tutor bots and things like that, which is pretty common because there's actually some apps out there now. But we see AI evolving heavily into more of what is your AI strategy and your platform with which your company is going to do AI on. So that's really how we approach it now. And we build more of the foundational model and the data connection points that are going to make your AI actually useful with your company information and all of the models that are out there, kind of combining the two. So that's more how we approach it.
Honestly, it's the classic problem, right? Of like, we've got to make sure the data is good, or, I mean,
right.
Okay, you just can't throw.
We know, Tom, right? Data is king.
I know. We're doing this forever. Like, I feel like, wait a minute, this sounds very familiar. Yeah, I know it's a cliche, but the garbage comment about in and out is true. But I have seen. I tell you, the one interesting use case that I've seen on the interviewing space, which was a fascinating example, was using artificial intelligence, like running your resume, putting in the job description, running your resume through it, and being like, "Can you tailor, my resume for this job?"
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which I thought was a pretty good one. But then my buddy, he works at another AI company, he said, "Yeah, but then what you want to do is then say, okay, now pretend you're the hiring manager looking at this job, and now tweak my resume. Like, tell me what's wrong with my resume for this job." I was like, oh, that's good. You're getting this sort of other perspective.
I mean, I use AI all the time. We use it for marketing. We use it for, and it's pretty good. It's gotten pretty good. So I think, it's crazy because we deal so much with education.
Sure.
AI is going to be prevalent. My kids are in high school. By the time they get to college, it's going to be used in every classroom. I mean, there's no way it's not going to be, because if you try, these teachers that are trying to basically like keep it out and say they're not going to use it, and I feel like you're now not teaching the kids how work's going to be, because everybody is going to use AI to do their job. Everybody.
Exactly right. Yeah, I can't agree with you. I find like somebody had made a suggestion to try one of the algorithms for one of the AI tools for writing code. I was like, how's it going to write code? Right. So I did this. I put in, I've got like, my hard drive on my Mac is getting a little full. So I'm using like an external drive, and I'm a slob with my files. So I'm like, I've got a copy here. I've got a copy there. How do I keep them in sync? And I could still, I was very proud of myself. I could still read and write some shell scripts. So I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. And it wrote this thing, and it was like, I understand what it's doing. I mean, the core of it's this one command, whatever. But then I'm like, you know what? I need to verify before you just go ahead and run this. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's put in some verification checks. I was like, all right. And I'm watching it literally rearrange the code and putting stuff. I was like, oh my God. The engineers have engineered themselves possibly out of jobs. Because it was wild to watch. And I'm like, okay, it didn't work, but still I can debug it.
That's why you have to know how to use it, right? So if the people that use AI to make their job better are the ones that are going to win, definitely.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think it's, yeah. So what's your, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
I think some of the use cases we've seen in the medical field, or, or even insurance, where you've got all kinds of piles of data, right? I'm talking about, documentation data, right? Where people have to review and all of that. That's where it's so powerful, not to replace what they're doing, but to speed it up, right? So you just, to be competitive, you're going to have to be able to use these tools to keep the pace, right? And there's great cost savings. There's new product services you can launch, you can develop using those techniques. So it's definitely going to be a mind-changing, paradigm-shifting, thing that we're getting into in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's. How about the have you heard, or are your clients asking you for the buzzword du jour of agentic artificial intelligence?
Oh gosh, yes, agentic.
Let me guess, you guys do that really well, right?
Oh, we know how to do that.
Oh,
I mean, it's basically like we were saying, the service-oriented architecture of AI. That's what it is.
Right? It's like, okay, got it. Yeah,
it's just the new buzzword.
It is. Yeah, it's funny how
this agent, and this agent knows this, and this agent knows that, and then they talk together, and it's amazing.
They talk to each other, and they need an orchestration engine to make the work. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Tell me more about this. It's like a maestro, but
Yep.
One of those fancy new words people just like to say.
Totally.
Very, very true. I'm going to work it into my conversation as I order my coffee in the morning.
Yes.
We make fun of ourselves with that stuff. Oh, the agenda.
No, you have to, right? You have to, especially when you've seen the trend over like a couple of cycles. It's like, okay, what? Oh, I've seen that. This is version 3. Awesome.
Sure. But what it didn't do is it was not even like an average. It was below average. It wasn't even like, I'm really into the industry, or like, I like how you do this and your competitors don't do it. Like, there was not even the bare minimum of like, I looked at your company's website for 2 minutes. I asked an AI agent to read your latest investor relations report and like give me 5 bullet points to talk about.
Bullet points, like how hard? Yeah,
there are ways to do this, right? But you're going to have a really good success rate. Sometimes it can involve lying to yourself, so be mindful about faking yourself out when you do this.
Yep.
But where you're able to, try to find points of connection between the job you're going for and other things you've done, because people really like it when they think they're hiring somebody that is excited about the role and also has valid experience where possible from multiple jobs before. That's sort of Frankenstein into like, in a way, this is kind of my dream job because it's my favorite part from this one and my favorite part from this. When you can tell that story, you're going to move up into that upper tier of candidates within the pipeline.
Completely agree. I'll add just one more element to that. I like the synthesis there. The only addition to that, from the perspective of the interviewer, I agree with you, and I appreciate the honesty. Like, I want a full-time job. Thank you for telling me what you want. But what I would like to know as the interviewer is, what do you want? What's in it for me? Like, why should I? What I want to hear from you, like you said, is these excite me. This drives me. This will teach me. This I will learn. It's okay to say, I'm excited about coming to your company because I want to learn about XYZ. Like, that shows a desire to learn and a passion, but it also tells me, the interviewer, that, hey, this guy or gal cares and wants to grow and is gonna put energy into learning those new things.
Yeah, no doubt. You're exactly right.
Here's you see the interview process evolving? I mean, technology's got such an impact, you know, between what we're doing now, like the video calls and all of that, but then there's artificial intelligence and there's all these bits around, like, you know, the future of interviewing, the future of recruiting. Like, what do you see as, you know, how that's changing?
I see, you know, there's that ebb and flow, Tom, between, you know, what we've seen with platforms today, you know, since COVID certainly, and the ebb and flow of, you know, accepting, you know, video engagements and personal engagements. I think more companies are adept to having their former part of their conversations on Zoom or on a video platform, and then latter conversations in person.
Sure.
I do think with the advent of AI, it's still gray matter at the moment. You know,
Sure.
a lot of AI, you know, source materials, garbage in, garbage out. You know, what are they taking in? You know, so and where do some of those parameters with an AI or an applicant tracking system, or, you know, where are they truly efficient? Where are they where is it a high quality metric of the platform? So you're not kicking stuff out. So if you're using transcription software as part of an interview, as part of a video platform, and they're transcribing all of your notes and what we're saying today, and how effective is it? How clean is it? How can you refer to that record when you're reviewing that candidate and passing that candidate's profile over? So I think AI, you know, and there's killer AI tools out there now.
Sure.
They're still kind of in their infancy. They're still, you know, revving up in terms of what, you know, what's going to be of great value to a company that's interviewing. So I think, you know, right now it's, you know, the next, you know, 3 to 5 years, you might see some of the cream of the crop rise out of those platforms where they develop use cases, where they show good UI, good customer experience, good metrics, things of that nature that will be integratable into applicant tracking systems, or,
Sure.
you know, things of that nature. So there's the actual, you know, the tools themselves, and how efficient are those tools, and then how are they going to be integratable down the road? So, you know, you have your interview, Tom and Doug are talking, and then you flick a switch, and then boom, and it goes into and workflows, and where AI is going to map workflows properly, you know, and then there's still a lot of that. So you know, where does it tee up workflows? Where does it develop things over time? And where are the integration points? And then you get, you know, the big boys, and then the, you know, and because they have the muscle and they have the resources to throw tons of money at development and integrations and acquisitions, and, you know, and things like that. So, you know, where do you have the have and haves nots? Where do they identify themselves? Where do they call themselves out? So I think, you know, in the model right now, it seems like it's more, you know, it's more video to on-prem. I don't see that changing much, that dynamic, but in terms of the tools and platforms, you know, the level of maturity, how do they develop, and how
it's
do
going
they
to continue,
you know, and gain brand recognition and notoriety, you know, in the market, and gain industry analyst recognition and press and media you know, you can say how great your product is on any product, but unless the analyst says it, or unless the customer says it, or a partner says it, you know, and that ecosphere is going to, you know, obviously elevate itself. So as long as there's seamless integration points, and they're on top of their game, and they're on top of, you know, new releases, and, you know, what's in it for the customer, what's, you know, going to be best use case for that.
I think it's been a journey through my life to get to where I am right now, and I think, I mean, just now I'm just kind of like starting to learn from myself of how it's been a journey of how my thinking has evolved into what I do now. Because to answer your question, like, what do I do now? I always try to approach it, and I want to use this buzzword of being 80-20, because in consulting they teach you how to be 80-20. But what that means is that basically most of the time, whatever you're trying to solve is going to be able to be solved. 80% of the value is going to come from 20% of that effort slash data slash whatever. And I think, I mean, just recently, the things I have to solve, like my company had no reporting, and the KPIs were nothing, like massive problems that you could argue, well, this is a 3-year journey to really invest on this. In 2 weeks, what can I do tomorrow? What can I do next week? What can I do in 2 weeks? And it's never going to be perfect. But I think, how do you become pragmatic, but at the same time directionally correct to make decisions? That's where I think you mix a little bit of like, well, the math to actually solve this, yeah, I can think about it in 2 hours. But then how do I go talk to the analyst that's going to produce it to make sure he understands it? And then how do you talk to the person marketing so that she understands this? And so it's more based the journey of solving something. Whereas if you ask me, when I came out of college, and I was an actuary, I was extremely analytical. I remember my first job, like some of my problems, I was like, well, the thing you do is calculation. And I took out a book, and I started doing like this, literally like integrals and like some formulas. And I was like, and thinking back, I would have laughed at myself, because it's like, you're trying to approach it in such an academic and precise way that obviously you spend 2-3 days doing it and you haven't done anything. You haven't solved absolutely anything. You're just making it more complicated. So it's all about how you can do imperfect answers with imperfect information, but that are just as good as possible directionally. So that any problem, I feel like if you approach it that way, you can solve from like new revenue lines, new products, anything can be solved through that way. So it's more about, I think it's a mindset more than a framework, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I like the idea of imperfect solutions, imperfect answers, but just what can I do? What is the, and it's a common trap. I remember in consulting, it's like, trying to find perfect. It's like, first things, let's figure out what are all the problems, right? And of these problems, what do you think we think are the most impactful we could tackle first, right? And then again, absent the information, the other thing that at least I recall distinctly from like consulting was, particularly when we're selling a project or even coming up with a solution, was very much dependent upon what would work for them. Like I tried this, it's something called the analytic hierarchy process years ago. It was like a way to make, instead of making like decisions, like if you come in to look at a problem, the concept was one of, you bring bias to the decision. Like if you want to, if you're going to position to your wife, should we fly, take the car or a train, right? Public transportation. You're going to come in with your bias, right? And then as you look down your different options of cost and efficiency, number of stops, duration, whatever, like you're going to naturally come in versus this approach gave you this kind of pairwise way of solving the problem. So it removes some of that inherent bias, which was interesting, fascinating, right? But when we came back to the client and gave them an answer they didn't want to hear, they're like, yeah, we don't think we want to do that. So like the solution that works, I think a lot of times if they're close is what can the client do? What do they want? I think that's the people part, if you would, is a huge factor there. Anyway.
Well, and I think just to add a point there is that I think that's precisely the part that being a young consultant or an early tenure consultant is what you learn the most to make those decisions. But once you become a partner, a junior partner or a senior partner, something like that, then the mindset shifts again. And then it's all about how can you square this thing that you sell for simplicity into a client that may need it. And honestly, that's why, for me in particular right now, as an example, the artificial intelligence bubble, to me, is precisely that. It's a bubble. Why? Because in my opinion, working in that space, we're trying to force fit this solution, this hammer, this very powerful hammer, into something that, if you ask me right now, where I work, you give us artificial intelligence, and it's pretty much like giving a calculator to an ape. Like it's because that's not what we need. We don't even have basic sales reporting right. So AI is not going to solve absolutely anything.
Sure.
And that's the part of consulting that sort of like I got a little less into, which is less about what the client needs and it's about what you need. And so I kind of I lost a bit of passion, if you will. I'm not saying that all consulting is like that, but I do think there's an element of salesmanship that it goes a little beyond the need, which for me at least is not. I never found passion in that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's what's the hot technology or topic today to sell to the client, right? And I think the reality is when you need the blocking and tackling, right? The basics first. You can eventually leverage the technology, but right now we need, like I said, sales reporting or whatever. Yeah, I do think I've been fascinated the way I've been using it. I think it's going to be much more personal, like help me write this document, or I need 5 ideas for, let's just say, I don't know, a podcast name for example. But like things like that, it's that level of sort of like assistant that's smarter than the usual. I won't say the name because it'll start up, but like what I mean. Like those, I think that level of usefulness will become more and more evident. That's just that's my perspective on that. Tell me about like your interviewing experiences. Like what are some of the major flubs candidates will do that you'd suggest? Like that one may not have gone so well, like on the other side of the desk.
I mean, I just went through right now because I just built my own team, right? I mean, I was on my own and now I have 6 people, so I just, it's very fresh for me. I think some of the themes that I see as very negative, right? The first one is to not have a good answer as to why you think the company or the role excites you. I think many people are very competent, and I had people that were senior directors and reporting in famous banks and all this. And when you ask them, but why do you want to go from a bank to an entertainment company? Which is a fair question. And I think the answer sometimes has been, well, because I live in Dallas and I want to stay in Dallas. Or the answer has been because I find that interesting, or I find like some sort of vague and loose answer. And so I feel that one of the main things that I look for, I would say not the main, but one of the biggest ones, is the fact that someone wants to be there, that somebody wants to, we feel passionate about the brand or what we're doing. I think that's one thing. And I think people often, especially lately, I feel like they struggle to articulate why does this particular company, role, industry, whatever, matters to you. I think that's the first major one I've seen. I think the second one is not preparing for like the type of questions that you think you're gonna get. For example, on a strategy role for a company, I would imagine that the first thing you want to do is Google the company, look at the investor relations deck, and there's very clear document that shows our strategy. Like it's as simple as that. You can use AI for that to your previous point.
Like, consume this document, give me my top 3 topics to talk about on the interview.
And one of the first things I ask is, well, tell me, assume you look at this, what questions do you have for me about our strategy? And I can't tell you how many times it's clear they don't even know. They didn't even take 30 minutes. Because I also think those can take a long time. But like they clearly haven't taken the time to slightly prepare for what honest questions do they have. Hey, I don't understand why why it says this, or why is the stock price like this. Basic questions that I feel like are smart questions. I think asking smart, because really what you're probing is, do these people can they ask smart questions? And I think that's something that gets lost. And I think the third one is applying for jobs where you don't really have the skill set. And I think it's something that in the past I think we all kind of do sometimes, or we think we can. But I think again, if you're I'm very clear with the requirements. You're gonna previous management consulting experience. Like I think you're very clear. And then you have you give a case to people, or you ask them about their experience. And I've had people that are completely, I've never even remotely had any sort of like consulting business strategy experience. And so it's an ultimate waste of time, and because you just don't have the background that I require. I kind of need someone to start at this level versus other levels. And I think it's kind of back to my point of like, you need to kind of know what you're good at, because if not, you're probably not going to be successful even in the interview, less in the job. Like sure. It doesn't do those any favors to you to do that. So I think a little bit of self-awareness in the application is another part that I think is very important.
How do you feel about someone stretching? Like if they didn't have necessarily the management consulting experience, but they'd done strategy for, either for a program or for, that would be okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but be prepared to talk about it is what I think you're saying, is like, at least have that. Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah.